So recently I decided to watch HBO Max's new Velma show. This was of course inspired by the Velma Dinkley character from the Scooby-Doo franchise, and after seeing all of the, let's just say, negative reception to the show, I thought I'd check it out for myself. And wow, I don't think I've ever seen so many people take a collective L altogether. Oh no, I'm not talking about the show. No, I'm talking about you guys, all you haters out there talking shit on this perfect show. Move over Arcane, move over Avatar, move over Breaking Bad. Y'all got nothing on this. And seeing all this negative representation has really been what's pushed me to want to make this video, seeing as how when other people disagree with me, I get really uncomfortable. And by not liking this show, you guys have taken a shot at my reputation. So in this video, I'll be defending myself with facts, something you have gotten in the habit of twisting. Honestly, this is the simplest part of the show, and the part of the show that I feel like it's the most misconstrued among the haters out there. Not to talk down to you plebeians down there upon my high horse, but I feel like you guys really just don't get the humor of the show. Take this joke, for instance.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
Everybody seems to be making fun of this joke by how eye-rolling and fourth-wall breaking it obviously is. But I really feel like you guys are missing how anachronistic this joke really is. You see, in this scene, it doesn't really make any sense for Velma to reference adult cartoons. I mean, that doesn't really work as a response to what he just said, but taking it out of the context of the show and looking at it as a part of the greater formula, it takes on a whole new meaning since the characters are in an adult cartoon. And look, yeah, I get it. I just blew your entire world right there. Really, just take a second and abbreviate on that. But jokes like this are littered throughout the whole show, and I really think it just comes down to critics being too stupid to realize when they're being commentated to. Or like in the very first episode, there's this funny little line from Velma about race-blind casting. And sure, while this line has no relevance to the actual scene and kind of comes out of nowhere, it does serve as a great bit of meta-commentary on the fact that the Scooby-Doo characters in this adult cartoon are all different races. Except Fred, of course, but don't worry, we'll get back to him a little later.
I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds!
All the characters of the Mystery Gang are back and better than ever in this show. And yeah, while they might not act like their traditional selves, or even act like reasonable people every now and then, I think it is really interesting that the writers of this show decided to go against the norm of making them actually good, well-written, and well-developed characters, instead opting to turn them into mouthpieces for potentially problematic political problems. Because let's be honest, who really wants well-written characters when you can just have your characters say real-world problems to try and enact change in this very immature adult cartoon? That's what's really going to move the politicians out there. But how are each of these characters? Well, I'm glad you asked, because they are very different. Velma, for instance, is no longer her sassy, know-it-all self, and is more of a annoying, whining girl with no redeemable qualities. Daphne's the overly tropey, bitchy high school girl. Norval, who I guess is supposed to be Shaggy in this context, is just a simp for Velma. And then we have Fred. Fred is just a wussy, racist, misogynist crybaby who's completely incompetent and charged for the main murder that happens in the first episode. Now, I know what you're thinking. How are any of these characters better versions of themselves? Well, there's a very simple answer to that. The plot of the first season so far has all been about Velma trying to solve the murders of several girls at her local high school. Sprinkled in there are the undercurrents of a smaller subplot all about Velma trying to find her missing mother. This subplot doesn't really carry all that much weight because we don't really have any reason to care about Velma and her relationship to her mom, but audiences definitely should still care about this, seeing as how Velma is the main character, so anything that happens to the main character we should care about just by default. And if you don't, then you're just wrong. And bad. And a fraud. And even though this main plot and all of the other little subplots don't really go anywhere, it's still rather engaging. Like Daphne having a subplot about trying to find her birth parents that is very cliche and predictable and gets resolved in about one episode. Now you might say this is bad writing, but I see it as the writers understanding that more is always better, so rather than putting the entire show into one intricate plot, it instead divides the show up over several smaller plots. Ah, yes, of course, the most controversial thing about this new series. Every single character has been race swapped in some way, with the exception of Fred, who, as I mentioned earlier, is still white, which I think is a shame, since if I were writing this show, I would have gone the extra mile and make him Hispanic, not just for positive representation, but more importantly, so that we could be set up for the biggest twist in the history of television. Since not only would his race be changed, but his last name would be changed to Fred Salamanca. That's right, Fred is Hector's long-lost child from Breaking Bad, and he's gonna take over the family business once he gets out. Vince, you beautiful bastard, you've done it again. Now, among all of the negative press that this show's gotten, I think nothing stood out more than this, the fact that this Scooby-Doo show does not have Scooby-Doo in it. Now, while you could easily take this as the writers either not understanding or outright hating the source material, I choose to see it as another piece of meta commentary. Since we know every character in this series has been irrevocably changed, mostly for the worse, that means Scooby must follow a similar trend. And that means it's time for my biggest prediction yet. You see, Scooby and the gang have spent years ripping the masks off of villains and exposing them for who they really are, but I think it's time we do the same to Scooby himself. That's right, Scooby-Doo is actually the one behind the murders all around the school. And to make it better, he's no longer a dog in this version, he's actually a bipedal water buffalo. But hey, that's just a theory, a certifiable fact because I just said so.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now.
All in all, the title of Masterpiece really doesn't do this show justice. It has everything that you could want and more, and the only reason that people aren't liking it right now is because they're racist. It's that simple. And if you don't like it, then you're racist too. Sorry, there's no way around it. Thank you, Mindy Kaling, and with all of that said, I'm gonna have to give Velma a 2 out of 10. It sucks.
Did you climb in my locker to prove how skinny you are again?
I thought lesbians were good at solving crimes. It's like the one positive stereotype perpetuated by cop shows. The malt shop owner is always a friendly black man or